Good afternoon and welcome to another Kerfuffle panel show. And here we are in the middle of our wonderful Down 3. And I think, Jerry, you'll be able to tell me this. It's true to say, isn't it, if a bit like World Cups, you get to keep it after the third one, don't you? So we've got an eternal world of lockdowns now. So this is it for keeps, people.
Yeah. You know what, though? I can't remember Lockdown 2. When you said that before in the pre-bit, I missed the
Lockdown 2 was amazing. Lockdown 2 was brilliant. That was my favourite lockdown, to be honest.
Yeah, it was
that came with tinsel.
So, Zoe's just come back. I'm going to unmute you now, Zoe, because you might not have realised I muted when you were out. She's just having to do her car because she parked it illegally, I believe. Okay.
I didn't park it, someone else did.
Okay, well,
let's not cause a domestic.
Have that sort of power. I dream of that sort of power. Right, let's go round in turn there. So, actually, if it's all right, as I go round and just introduce you, if you don't just mind saying which business you're from, who you are, just as a really brief introduction. Paul, can we kick off with you as you're next to me in the lucky seat?
Yeah, sure thing. Paul Davis, owner of At Home Estate and Lettings Agency in Horsham and Southwater in Sussex.
Thank you. James, over to you.
Hi, James Richards, co-director, single office agency, Madison's Residential, Tunbridge Wells in Kent.
Good stuff. Over to you, Rory.
Rory from Dataloft. We analyse the property market, so we make sense of all the noise out there in the property market data world.
Excellent. There's a lot of noise, Rory. We're coming back to you. The wonderful Zoe.
Zoe Bywater from Belvoir, Bedford, estate agency, but predominantly lettings, 18 years experience, one office, franchised. All right, that sounded a bit like a job interview there. You were going for the full pitch, but I respect that. Never undersold. Katie, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm Katie Darlow from Number One Real Estate and based in South Wales, covering all of that region.
Lovely, and a wonderful part of the world. I've sped through it on my way to Cardiff. And boys in the hood, the master of content, Jerry Lyons. How the devil are you, sir?
I'm very good, thanks. So, Jerry Lyons, Estate Agent Content Club. I write content for estate agents.
And you beat up Christopher Watkins in your spare time?
I smash him to bits.
Nice.
If he wants a rematch, we'll call it out here.
You've got a permanent invite to this show on that basis. Right, okay. Let's just kick off then, if that's all right. Obviously, I think we are now obviously in this third lockdown, and I think obviously everyone's feeling a little bit just. They've all had enough of it. I would just point out to everyone else, my job is to try and cheer people up. Can you imagine what it would be like if we didn't have a vaccine? So at least that is silver lining, is at least we know this is all coming out. But they have been different in nature, and I think obviously they're talking about that on the news night on night, aren't they? About what the difference is. From a business perspective, though, what have you learned from the previous lockdowns that you've had to adapt and pivot the business, as they do, to make that has worked well for you? And again, we'll just kick off with you, Paul, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things we quickly learned on the first original lockdown, and certainly that we're putting into place now and we'll be developing again, is just moving your marketing from engaging to engage with the community. So we ran lots of sort of webinars, what's going to happen to the property market if you're looking to sell, how to sort of position your property or get it ready for sale. So I think just trying to be informative and making sure your marketing's moving away from selling and more like supporting. I think that was key for us. Excellent.
Okay, lovely and succinct. Anyone else who wants to jump into this one?
We put out a weekly vlog, goes out on a Friday. So we've continued with that and just kept everybody up to date with what is going on in the property market, that we're open, but equally involving those in the community, mentioning restaurants that are doing a click and collect service, and sort of pushing it out further than just pushing the properties. It's pushing it out and sharing it out with the town businesses that are open, how people can access that.
Okay, that's nice. So you have to be quite. It has to be informational, doesn't it? I think is the key to all this. I mean, Jerry. I mean, that's kind of the most obvious point of marketing in general. You can't go down the hard sell route, especially in the middle of a pandemic. But so you found that useful then, James, in terms of just getting into the habit of that.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, we published a lockdown guide sheet, keeping the local shops, independent shops that were open. Fruit and veg, or food, drink, everything that they could get, restaurants, just informing people what was open, because there was an awful lot. I think in the first lockdown, certainly everything was closed. It was almost like Armageddon. Second lockdown, no wonder Jerry missed it, because it didn't actually feel like much of a lockdown to me, anyhow, speaking personally. And third lockdown, last Monday night, it felt very much like the first Boris announcement, right, we're going into lockdown last March. But then very quickly, as David Cox mentioned, in his webinar last Wednesday, with an hour on the government website, it was, property market remains open. So at least we within our industry knew where we stood and what we should be doing. So yeah, sort of this lockdown feels a little bit more of a hybrid. Certainly I'm seeing less people around than I had done 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, they're revolving their lockdowns as we do our businesses, aren't they? As used to go. Katie, you had your hand up just a minute ago there. What have you learned?
I think the main thing now is the contact quickly with us and our clients and with the vendors and buyers. So simple thing that we are doing in the minute is WhatsApp group for each house. So the valuer that is attached to that property, WhatsApp group with the two vendors or whoever's acting on it, just to be able to let them know little bits of information really quickly, and they can pop messages in there. And also, it's not, I like to see it as a normal thing, but really taking the time to run through your applicant and potential vendor list as well, and just phone people for a chat, not just about, the house, but just for a chat. And they've got questions they want to ask. They want to know, well, how do we go about this? How do we go about that? I'm finding I'm spending, 30 minutes per call, but they're really worthwhile.
And they're going to need that. Obviously, pipelines and holding them together is going to be pretty much order of the day, isn't it? And to have that increased contact can only help reduce the amount of fall throughs and everything else going forwards, can't it? Definitely.
And lots of people are really keen to try and get their sales through before the 31st of March. So we're getting a huge number of calls from people stressed with it, really worried. Are they going to get the surveys in time? Are they going to, are you going to be there for the keys to hand over to the surveyor? Just to be able to reassure them even on the processes and how we are handling that. We're telling people, look, if we're not in the office at that particular moment, you just call this number, we'll be there within 15 to get the key to your surveyor or whichever it takes, because they're so worried about having the extra few thousand on their bill if they go past the 31st of March.
And what's your guesstimate in terms of, because we are obviously all in this bubble of property, so yes, we hone straight in on the fact, it's open again. Are the public fairly surprised to hear that things are still going in general, or and i.e. that communication is really necessary?
Well, we're finding people are both really. Some are phoning as if there's just no difference whatsoever, and they expect to be able to view. And then we're getting some clients that are saying, well, I phoned 5 agents, they're not doing viewings, so you are. We're taking it very much case by case. I'm saying to the vendors, look, it's completely down to you. If you feel comfortable, then we will, follow our normal safety steps to make sure that you're as safe as possible in your home. But if you're comfortable, we're comfortable. If they're not, similarly, we'll do virtual tours or whatever we can do to get around that instead.
So good old-fashioned empathy, mirroring where the person is up to in terms of, how safe they feel and everything else. Zoe, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Katie was saying, really, is that I noticed when this announcement was made that I think if you're not in the industry, you would not know that we're still operating as an industry, because they kept that very, very quiet and very, very low key. And if you look at any of the press releases, etc., they've never actually said that openly. And I think you only really know about it if you're sharing that information. So, people like who are already in the pipeline, for example, are going to know that. We found weirdly enough, this lockdown doesn't feel like any sort of lockdown in this town. People are still coming to the front door and rattling it. They're still wanting to do viewings on occupied premises, and we're having to re-educate people, without being too alarmist, but this virus is spreading like wildfire, and explaining to them the safety elements of it, and going back to like the Jerry element of this. I honestly think there's several things as agents we need to be doing. We need to be communicating with our clients, but also the wider community, which is where obviously where Jerry comes in, and he's done some really amazing things in a very short space of time. Just to sort of get engagement and sort of say to people, I think this is a great time for people's opinions of estate agents to change, because we've had this negativity for many years. And I think now's the time to show up people. I posted the thing about the printing today and said, hey, we're not all bad, look, and it's just changing that mindset.
Could you just explain to people that, because that's a brilliant initiative and I think it's worth talking about.
Jerry?
So that's right. So this is, I don't know who started off. I think Stephen Brown might have floated the idea.
Jerry, by the way, if you don't know, it was my idea. So
yeah. Right. Let's start again. It was Simon Wells' idea.
We'll re-edit it anyway. It's not going out live. Yeah.
So obviously, all the kids are homeschooling now, or most kids are homeschooling now, and a lot of kids don't have access to computers or laptops. And it's surprising because everyone thinks this younger generation between sort of 5 and 16 live on their laptops, but some kids don't. So it seems like the industry has really seized the opportunity to donate laptops, which is what Luke Sinclair's done. He was on Radio 5 Live yesterday afternoon talking about his donations in Leicester. As a business, we've donated money to schools, and I know other agents have just gone direct. So that's another option. So you can donate equipment, you can donate money. A lot of agencies are getting on board with this, offering a printing service. So I think that's a great initiative. And one thing that is guaranteed about this content, and I will lay money on it, that you will not see your posts as shared as stuff you're doing for the community. Forget your market share. It's all about community care.
Just explain again there, just exactly so people know it. I saw you're quite right about. I mean, it went more viral than the virus. Funny enough, David Mintz undertook it and was just sat there watching the amount of shares, watching the love flood in. So this is about essentially just offering out to people, as I understand it. Look, if you do have printing requirements, come to us. We've obviously got the equipment in the office, and whether you need that for schoolwork or essential stuff, we'll print it out all as socially, as safe as we can do, and get that to people in need. Is that right? Is that how it's framed?
Exactly that. It's exactly that. I couldn't add any more to it because it's very succinctly summed up by you there. So yeah, exactly.
If I could add some metrics to that, we launched that 3 days ago. Within less than 48 hours, we'd had 14,000 views and I think 85 shares. That's beyond. We thought we'd help out. That was beyond what we were ever expecting. Yeah.
It's brilliant, isn't it, Paul? I mean, genuinely, that's one of those nice things. And look, that there is a halo effect here that, as Zoe says, does many people talk about it. You get utils or stuff from doing nice charitable things, but it should never get in the way of the fact that you're still doing the right thing, a good thing. And if there is a halo effect there where businesses can benefit, then all well and good, as long as the good thing is done right, isn't it? I'm a firm believer in.
Completely.
Good. Well, your silent nods tell me that I'm going to take it. That's the way forwards. And Jerry, yourself, I mean, how in terms of you as you're this, I was going to say you're special, but that could be taken many different ways. But how have you changed your business for somebody who I guess like Rory is so much about communicating digitally here? Your demand for your skills must have gone through the roof, haven't they?
Yeah, I think the first lockdown was when the concept of content marketing, the penny dropped for estate agents because they had such active audience. Everyone was at home wanting to do something with their time. It was a perfect time to put good content in front of them. I think the biggest thing I've learned about the way we've changed our approach is we don't plan more than a week ahead now, our content, because things are just changing like that, which is good because me and the team with me, we're all former journalists. Yeah. So we're used to that fast moving
You don't need to apologise, Jerry. Now is not the time for you to apologise about that.
Could be worse. I could be an estate agent. So I think that's the thing that we've learned is we're not planning. None of our content is planned a week ahead now. We're just doing it as we go.
Well, I think that's fascinating. So what you've done there almost is to, whereas agents and Rory will always tell us the importance of being hyper local, actually you're going, hyper timely, if you like. But therein lies the advantage of working someone like you, because as we all know, creating relevant, interesting, engaging content is bloody difficult, and it's bloody difficult creating it per se at any time. So to do that and to do that when it's newsworthy as well, that would overload a lot of people. But that's where, without giving you obviously too much of a plug, but that's where obviously somebody like you with that outsourced service can help 10 times over.
But I also think, to give agents their props, they've been really good at getting content. They've really improved their content over the past 6 months. How their video, like you were saying, Paul, or was it James, about just updating your community. Because I know from my background in local news, the death of local news has created a void for information. Yeah. I've always said to estate agents, step into that void. Provide local news, provide local information. Like this time around, this lockdown, offer the printing service. I can see that there might be a movement as well towards a bit of a food bank initiative as well, after the bit of chaos that we're seeing nationally. So that could be another opportunity to do good. And a bit like you said, Simon, if you're doing good for good's sake, it's always a win-win. You're always going to get something out of it. Call it karma, call it what you like, profile building. There's plenty of opportunities out there for agents to generate their own content, as well as the likes of me and Rory as well. So don't just generate all your own content, because we'll be out of work.
Yeah. And what it's allowed you to do, isn't it, is that Mr. Watkins, again, just to give him another name, that digital mayor, being the digital mayor, what Paul and James and all of you were talking about here, is really giving the ability to step up to that and deliver on that, isn't it, in terms of you are needed more than ever, rather than just talking about a nice restaurant, for the community itself.
The digital mayor is still there. It's more important to be a community cheerleader at the moment.
Okay.
You've got to be a cheerleader for your community. Get out there and just listen. We all need hope. I think location in London and in the East, they've got a great theme of their communications at the moment, and it's just around hope, saying we've got the strapline, better times are coming. So if we can all that's a great message. That's a very timely message.
It absolutely is, but it also plays into what people hope for a home move as well, isn't it? That's you're moving, and everything's going to improve because you're moving to a new place. Exactly. Rory, you were going to just comment there?
Well, I mean, really interesting conversation. I agree with all of that. I was going to drop it, Mr. Statman. drop one stat in. I won't bore you with any more, but
we love stats. Don't say that, bro. So go on.
When we analyse the Property Academy does this huge, big home moving trend survey every year, and 35,000 people did it last year. And we analysed it. And actually, one of the interesting stats was that during the first lockdown, only 35% of tenants were contacted by their agent. Wow. And at the same time, and I know, Zoe and Katie, you both said how important it is as an agent. This is an opportunity for you to stay in touch, to build relationships. And actually, in that same survey, another stat was that 12% of those tenants said they wanted to buy in the next 12 months. Now, actually, that number will have increased dramatically since then, I'm sure, because people are fed up of the four walls around them. They might want more space, more gardens, change in lifestyle. So this is actually an opportunity to not go quiet and sort of take a break from your marketing, but actually ramp it up. And Gary's absolutely spot on, and everyone's spot on that I've listened to so far. And what you need is the right kind of content to be able to ramp up your communications. And you've got to be relevant, you've got to be useful, interesting, not salesy, not bragging about how many sales you've had, how wonderful your business is going when people are struggling. So mixing up your content, showing what you contribute to the community, and also adapting. The way we adapted a lot in the first lockdown was by changing the type of content. So we focused a lot on how people are using the living rooms for exercise, how the house around them is changing and how they were using it. How people are adapt. So a lot of infographics we did about the new way people are, the new normal, the new way people are living their lives. And it's just, if you can go that extra mile to show that you understand what they're going through, and that they're useful, and they want to hear more from you, then you'll create that kind of long-term relationship. But there's certainly an opportunity for agents from the survey to really learn from the fact that don't stop communicating, do even more kind of in this next lockdown.
It's very important, as you highlighted there, to not be triumphant in any way. I was talking to an agent just before the call who was saying, what's been really interesting is people have been talking about when you have a conversation with another agent and they say, look, not only have we beaten the targets we set ourselves, when we reassessed in April and May, those new targets, we've actually beat the targets that we'd set at the start of the year, but before the pandemic was even on the horizon, and they were 35% year on year. But if that information ever got out per se into the public, with you saying we've smashed it and everything else there, that it would be well, Jerry would know, wouldn't it? It would be a proper Ratner moment, wouldn't it? Because I think the public are waiting for people to jump on top of anyone who's perceived to be benefiting from this. Okay, in terms of what we spoke about kids there as well, and I'd like to just touch on this point. Do we remember the old BBC? Who was it? The BBC interview, don't we? Where I think he was a North Korean analyst. The little kid comes. He's giving this stark interview about the potential for nuclear war, and his kid walks in doing all this. And it was a lovely moment, but it was like, everyone around here, and I think watching will appreciate, they really have that moment, haven't they, where something like that's happening, you've been mortified. I think genuinely one of the most wonderful things is people are just so much more relaxed about that kind of thing happening, aren't they? At the moment, we know that most people have got their kids at home, so quite often you'll see someone popping up behind their dad, going away with or coming in and saying, I've had enough of it. Do you think I personally think that's a wonderful thing? Is there anybody here that thinks that is not the case or gets frustrated by that at all?
I was only going to say, I think everybody, this lockdown, it happened overnight. One of the ladies that works for me, she's got a daughter at home who's 7. She's literally working one side of the table with the daughter homeschooling the other side. Whilst 9 months ago, we would have been sort of thinking, oh my gosh, that just can't work. She can't do that. Now it's happening. It's becoming normal. She'll say to me, I'm just going to pop out for 20 minutes with my daughter for a walk. That's fine. And I think, when I'm on a Zoom valuation, it's quite regular that I'll see a cat will either come across the screen on my screen or their screen or something, or they say, oh, sorry, I've just got to go and get an Amazon delivery from the door. I think people are a lot more giving, and they're not expecting us to, they realize we're at home, they're at home, and I think everybody feels as if we are all in it together a lot more.
Definitely. It's just showing the more personal side of us, and us in our own homes as well. I mean, at the end of the day, we all go to homes, and you're seeing us in our homes as much as we're trying to find them their next home. It's the importance of personality, and that we're all surviving in this. How
as an agent would you might have built up more of a personal kind of profile during this period because of those kind of things, but how do you go back to the same old office, the same old ways of life after this? Or
well, I'm fascinated.
That's going to be a good one.
Yeah. What are you going to take forwards, I suppose? I think the first thing, let's be honest, is none of us are going to want to see a Zoom meeting for a while when we're finally allowed out. But what bits do you genuinely change permanently going forwards? Yeah, Zoe?
One of the things that I've benefits probably not the right word, but I've gained is the way, because we've adapted our processes. We're not actually doing physical viewings on properties unless someone actually commits. So they pay a holding deposit, fill in a pre-qualification form, and we'll only do it on vacant properties. Yeah. But what we found by adapting that way and doing the virtual tours and actually, I suppose, qualifying them even more is that we're getting rid of the tire kickers. We're not wasting time on wasted appointments and dealing with people that are not really that committed to moving. So, going forwards, I think we'll probably carry on that way. because I think it benefits everybody, because you can focus your time a lot more on building relationships and, you know, doing the communicating and the community work. That again is something I want to carry on doing.
It's fascinating, Zoe, looking at the interest we have on all the myriad different suppliers on we have on our site. Those prop tech suppliers that ordinarily have people clamoring, you know, we can give you more leads. You know, this is how you generate more leads. Those ones are almost being left on the wayside, because it's actually, look, leads aren't the issue. Conversion of leads is the critical issue here. Show us how to get to the hot leads in the quickest possible way, and find us a way of still being able to deal with those other ones, because there's nothing more certain if you surmise and think and guess that somebody's a tire kicker and you treat them appropriately, either by delayed contact or by no contact, they're definitely a tire kickers, because you've done nothing to win their business.
I mean, Michelle Gallagher from JDG, who's up in Markham, she now does pretty much all of her market appraisals virtually, and she has a 95% conversion rate, which is absolutely phenomenal. And I keep asking her what her secret is, but that's just, you know.
She's actually, sorry, Zoe, I was going to say, she's absolutely amazing at her marketing. And I mean, what she does is she kind of gets people to choose her as an agent before they even thought about moving, because she's just consistently putting out your useful, relevant market insights, knowledge about the market. She's brilliant on videos, on blogs, and she just hammers it out week upon week. And I think she will therefore get better quality customers who are more likely to commit. So it's like, if you can win that battle to almost get chosen before someone even thinks about putting their property on the market, then that's what I think she does so well.
It's the core pillar of marketing and sales, trust and empathy, isn't it? And the one thing you would know 100% is that she comes across, there's no hint of bullshit or anything else like that. She clearly comes across as lovely as she is there, and you would just want to, it's not always possible to deal with people you like, but in that particular case, who else would you be going to around there?
We did a really a webinar with Michelle recently, and I think it was Stephen Brown that planted this amazing idea, but I think he tasked a number of agents to become the Google of their marketplace, which I thought was a really cool phrase. And they all went off to work out how they were going to do that. But so she's really stuck to that mantra. So she wants people to consider her as the go-to person for local market knowledge. And everything she does is kind of centered around that. And I think so it's quite a nice aim to be your local. Are you the local Google of the property market?
How do you, Rory? This is the perfect time to ask. Data Loft and your insight products bring to life. They turn what I would always term, raw data into really useful information in an engaging fashion. How should people best make use of those kind of tools that you do, whilst also, though, getting across the personality, as you just mentioned, that Michelle does so well herself?
Yeah, you're absolutely. It's a mix. Jerry would agree with that. You've got to show your personality. You've got to show your market knowledge. You've got to mix up your content. You know, we'd never advocate hammering out stats all the time. So, social media is the obvious one. You need to be engaging consistently on social media, but you look at most estate agents' social media channels, and it'll be, properties of the week, or there might be a few weeks gap between their last post. So you need those consistently going out, and every post, like a perfect post in our world, is someone uses a bit of data. So did you know values have gone up in Derby by 5% in the last 10 years? How much is your property worth? And then you have a call to action, which is a click through to their valuation tool. And so you need to have an interesting bit of content that grabs their attention, and then a really strong call to action. But so social media is obviously key, but you need your content to be interesting to people and relevant to them. So obviously talking about how much their property is worth, or talking as an agent about how much you contribute to the community, it is really useful. But there's also, during the last lockdown, there was a huge spike we saw on people visiting agents' websites.
Yeah.
And that was interesting. So we have online local stats and insights that feed directly through to the agents' websites we work with. And we saw a huge spike in people checking out what was going on in terms of local area pricing, how many properties have sold recently, etc. And then from that, they were like, you know, clicking on the valuation tool on that page. And that was quite interesting, because if people are clicking on that page, they already know about you as an agent because they're on your website.
Yep.
And then they're asking for a valuation. So that's an incredibly strong lead. So yeah, digitally, you need to cover all the angles. And obviously, if people love property porn at times like this.
Yeah.
They want to be knowing what's going on with the market, and they want to see the best property you've got. So you need blogs on your website that are continually updated, your social media channels working. And then other things, you know, very few agents do emails. So, you know, I think Zoe or Katie, you said it was a good time to work your database, but, you know, I've never received an email from an agent in my life. And it's like, that's a very cheap and easy way just to share some local insights or help people.
That scares me, Rory. You haven't got my perception is that we're flooded, people's inboxes are flooded over, but your personal experience is that actually, quite contrary to the battle of the inbox, you aren't getting the emails you would actually want and find interesting from your local agents.
No, two obvious gaps are emails, don't get them, and obviously during the last lockdown, people stopped doing door drops as well. And I can understand that. But there's now this big gaping gap on my doormat. So an agent that shows initiative and sends something really useful and interesting through the door to me, I'll read it.
Sorry, so are you surprised by that, or does that?
100% right. Absolutely 100% right. All of your marketing as an estate agent, I believe, and I think a lot of people that know their stuff believe, it should all lead back to your email database, because you might have 10,000 followers on Facebook. Well, actually, you ain't, because Mark Zuckerberg owns the data. Yeah. So let's get that right. But if you've got an email database and you engage it with, we've got this little thing that we always stick to. We say the content has to hit. It has to create hits. Now, hits is it helpful? Is it interesting? Is it trustworthy? So trustworthy is, if you're going to quote something, it's got to come from the BBC, the NHS, the World Health Organization, or something like Dataloft. You know, there has to be something to give it that layer of trust. And the S is sustainable. So if you can tie your content, if your content ticks all those boxes, and it goes out via email, via social media, via video content as well, because that's massive. But also the other point as well, quality print. I think I know of only 2 agents, and these are just the ones I know of. No doubt there's more, that produce a local newsletter. One is Miguel Gray in Wembley, and it's by newsletter, I mean it's news about the local area. It's not property this, property that. It's a bit of I'd say she's probably got 80% local news, 20% property news. So there's some big opportunities there for agents to get their print marketing right, and also their email marketing, because and Rory touched on it as well. When everyone runs that way, it creates an opportunity for people to go the other way. Do you know what I mean?
We're all used to talking about herd mentality, aren't we? Or herd immunity, but actually in marketing, there's also that herd mentality. And Seth Godin's Purple Cow was the absolute proponent of standing out from the crowd. Just because people are backing bubbles, either in an investment sense or in a marketing sense, just take a step back to think, is that still the place to be?
Yeah, and that's why it's a good time. That's why it's a good time for estate agents to advertise at Christmas. Because loads of estate agents say, I'm gonna pause my advertising at Christmas. Why? This is the thing. Everyone's at home at Christmas.
Yeah.
They're bored at Christmas. It's the perfect time to advertise.
I'll come to Katie in a second, but one thing I just realised you might not know, Jerry, is that those keywords you just spelled out, they actually they add up to hits. So you might want to use that. Yeah, consultancy from me, 15%. Sorry, Katie.
You led me on to, I was going to say, I'll show you actually, because it's right here. We sent this out at Christmas, if you can see that, to all our vendors, buyers, and some prospective clients. And I just thought it was a normal thing to do, as in send a Christmas card. Yeah. The amount of people that came back to me, because I wrote personal messages in them as well, that said, thank you so much for that. I had people posting on Facebook saying, look at what my agent's done. Just because we put a little note in there to say, I know their children's name or whatever, hope you all have a nice Christmas. That is something that I don't think anyone else seemed to be doing. And also about the email, what I'm finding is really useful at the moment is I'm sending Acabooms. I don't know if anyone else uses Acaboom, out to people who aren't necessarily ready to sell. But I'm saying, would it be helpful if I sent you a marketing report on your home and some comparable data just for you to have a look at, and then I'll update you every month if you want with any changes. They get that Acaboom presentation. They're then getting the updates every month. And they're not ready yet, but they're 6 months' time, they probably will be. But they're really enjoying the data that goes in there, which I think some is pulled through from, I'm not sure which stats they get.
You're using, so Acaboom traditionally has been used as at the market appraisal stage, but you're actually now using that as part of your nurturing program as well. Yeah, that's a lovely
yeah. So and you can see their engagement with it as well. That's the great thing, that they are engaging with it.
Yeah, that's great. Do we think that one of the benefit, if there is a benefit from all this, that actually it is playing to the strengths of the independents? Personality definitely, is something that larger brands find it they're much more oil tankerish, aren't they? Whereas you guys, you've already mentioned what you guys are doing here. You can almost do like that. Jerry's spoken about the relevance of being timely as well. So it is possible to stand out from the crowd just in terms of this industry, isn't it? Much easier.
Yeah, if I can add there, so I think people buy off people, and that's where we're sort of certainly an independent. We can very much utilise our face and our name and our brand, and by engaging with the community, we're on all the social media sort of local groups, and we do updates on there like landlord changes. I do quick videos and stuff like that, so informative, and building anything that we've done in the community gets posted on there to support. But there also seems to be this big thing where people are trying to support their local community as well, and that's obviously what the corporates aren't always seen as. They're seen as a big entity, and sometimes the local independent is like, well, that's Paul, his daughter goes to that nursery and he lives in that road. And I think there seems to be a bit more of a move to people supporting local independent businesses in general, which will help the estate agents as well.
And Paul, can I just ask in terms of how much you estimate how much time you spend on social a day, and has that increased? And if just as a percentage, how much that's increased from what you were doing before all of this pandemic kicked off?
Yeah, absolutely. We really increased. We've always been heavy into the social media marketing. That certainly really increased the first lockdown, because all I did was think, like, forget selling, now start prospecting, which is just getting your brand, your name and your face out there. So we did loads of like online webinars and, put out information pretty much, I guess, like you sort of what Rory's mentioned about sort of information about the local market, how to support local businesses, and just sort of engage there. And absolutely, that's led us to sort of increase very much the social media marketing, because we started realizing that people were engaging with us as a brand, and like I say, people buy off people, and actually by putting your face out there, it might be socially, but people are sort of seeing a person at the end of it rather than a slick sort of brand and shiny sort of badge, as it were. So I think that is definitely increased the amount that we do, and is certainly going to be a focus in this lockdown as well.
I was talking to him from a office, and he was saying, whereas it was when they had board meetings for the 20 office group, it might be an afterthought. The marketing director might talk about social, but what had happened in that first lockdown, those Facebook stats, the engagement stats, were front and center then as part of every board meeting, as you would probably expect. And I think that attention, it's outpaced, and a lot of you guys have obviously been involved with this anyway, but it really has brought social into the must-have rather than nice-to-have category, hasn't it?
Completely. I mean, we didn't have, this time last year, we didn't have a marketing person. We did it internally. We've now recruited somebody to help us with our marketing, because of the engagement now, the social side that we hadn't been. We kind of flirted with it, I guess, would be the best way of describing it. But now its importance is key.
James, we're the same as you. Even we're not an agent, but I think that's a really good point about using an expert on something like social media, because if you just toy with it and do it when you can, then you tend to not do it particularly well. So, even we as an agency who've got marketing experts on board, we're going to use someone who just completely focuses on doing that as well, and they're responsible for it, and they can give you stats back. And I think you're right. I think agents who focus on actually using someone and paying someone to do that are ahead of the game.
Well, it's also because they're keeping an eye on what's going on in the community to a much greater extent than I'm able to. Obviously, working, homeschooling, etc. during the day. That's their role.
Yeah, it's all about consistency, though, isn't it? Again, there. Yeah. I don't know who mentioned it earlier, but you talk about the property listings being on there, and then tumbleweeds in a digital kind of social experience. There are lots of people that go out there, do a load of videos, then just disappear off, and actually that ain't great for audience engagement, is it?
You know what agents should do more of as well? They should document their days, because a lot of people are interested in property and they're interested in what estate agents do. And by just simply documenting your day, it was always a really popular piece when I was a journalist to do a day in the life of. Yeah. You would follow the local firemen, do you know what I mean? Local politicians, that sort of stuff when we were local papers. And agents can do that really well if they're out and about in their community, because as long as you've got a phone, you've got a platform. I mean, you've got a platform and you've got your social media team or your eggs, ducks in a row, whatever that phrase is. The content creation possibilities are limitless, because you can say, right, just popped out for a coffee, takeaway coffee, obviously, social distancing and all this at Fratelli's, great coffee shop, check it out. That's one bit of content you can use 5 times over the course of a month.
I think you've wittingly launched estate agency nightmares there. We're gonna have people shouting, "You're an idiot sandwich! What are you?" Okay. I should just point out we're getting a few people saying hello and everything else. An anonymous Facebook user popped up and said 500 plus shares and 55,000 views, all about helping your community. I think that's in reference to those sharing those kind of ideas we were talking about earlier. I mean, that's absolutely staggering in terms of obviously the reach you get with those things, because of course they are you're always trying to get other people to share, aren't you? And so just going back to those stories again before, if you can do that with obviously a positive message, it's gonna reverberate around.
There's a really easy way of remembering why this sort of content is so powerful. If people care, they'll share.
That's great. Yeah.
Nobody gives a shit about your market report, market share. Chris Watkins, bang on there. No one, apart from your mum, or they might care when you're out on evaluation and you put it to them. Yeah, the general public doesn't care. But if you say, right, we've donated 10 laptops to give kids that might not have laptops a chance, they care, so they're going to share. So yeah.
Well, the other thing as well, Jerry, I should just point out, I thought that's an absolutely great idea, documenting your day. But I'm definitely not doing that myself.
Not you, Simon. Not you.
That'll end up all in a bit of trouble here. We've also, I thought this was a bit rude. Sorry, say, Whaley, I can't stay on to watch, but I'll watch later. Thinking of you over there. But just to point out, we're getting international. That's my friend Peter Clark from Australia. So he's probably just showing off actually that he can go out. But anyway, that's a country that understands how to do lockdowns properly.
Simon, sorry, can I turn the tables a second and ask you a question? Because obviously you've got links with a lot of Australian agents. How are they doing things over there in terms of what are they doing that's working well?
Well, largely they've been able to go back and practice as usual now, haven't they, is the honest truth. They did have the most, certainly Melbourne, certainly wasn't it, down in Victoria, had the toughest of lockdowns there, which I think is fair to say a lot of them felt was far too onerous. But what it has shown is those countries that are actually outside of, quite regimented countries like, Singapore, famously Korea, those countries that either have quite an obedient thing or they were just told not to do it. They really got on top of it. And of course, as far as I can see, it's almost as if it hasn't happened now. I'm sure there's, there is stuff, but compared to our experience here, they cut down, they locked down much quicker, much harder, and they're getting the benefits now, haven't they? But it is. Look, I'm not a medical expert, but of course, them being in the summer periods as well seems to help much more, doesn't it? In terms of not suffering quite as bad from obviously this third wave of the virus, which we're getting at the moment.
Simon, I was going to say on the subject of Australia and what Katie said earlier, but one of my heroes, Josh Fegan, who I'm sure you've all heard talk at various points, but that point about Katie sending out the Christmas card, which sounds like the most basic kind of thing to do. I've again never had a Christmas card from an estate agent, but Josh Fegan always has that analogy of going to the dentist, and what the first thing that a dentist does when you're about to leave is book you in for another appointment. Yeah. And so, and not all estate agents do this, obviously, but I suppose the tendency is you've got the sale done or you've got the flat let out and you move on and you don't stay in touch. But actually sending out a Christmas card or doing a 1-year anniversary where you send them a report of everything that's happened in their market or to their property in terms of values and stuff after a year is a really nice way of keeping the conversation going.
I think it's absolutely perfect, Roy. And do you know what I've thought for some time now, and it's a free tip, but I think, setting the expectation is so important, isn't it, with a client who's bought or sold with you. And what I would be doing, and it's entirely free as long as you've got Outlook or any calendar system, is saying, look, just to let you know, obviously we're going to want to keep you up to date with what's happening in the local marketplace. Sending them a recurring appointment on the anniversary of their move that sits there, they're going to see that as a benefit. You've got that locked in then, and even if it's just a 2-second conversation, you could put a permanent Calendly link in there that puts you onto Zoom as well. Just in terms of that gives you the ability, GDPR compliance and everything else, to stay in contact and stops that issue you were just talking about as well, doesn't it? I never get an email from them. Well, now you've actually got an appointment booked in for the next few years.
Yeah.
The reason why Katie's one works so well is because she took the extra time to write the personal note. I must have got a Christmas card from about 6 different agents. The only one I remember is Locations, because they wrote a nice personal message. They spoke about something we'd actually spoken about. If you just send it and it's got no name and it's just your team signing the card and then signing the card, that's not marketing. That's anti-marketing.
Nice big QR code that makes it feel like you're a number and in the Matrix.
Jesus, do you know what I mean? So that's why I love Katie's that hand. How long did it take you extra, Katie? What, a minute, 2?
A few nights. So I reckon I did 3 nights and probably did about 100 a night.
God.
Okay.
Well
so
done.
it was quite hard, as in I was sat there for about a few hours writing them all. But I just went through the completions for the previous year. So I sent them to buyers who completed. Yeah. Sales going through, both vendors and buyers, and on the market vendors as well. I would have done more, and next year I'll try and be more organised to do more. But I reckon I got through a few hundred.
So that could be a birthday card as well, couldn't it? For when you
do that in other places would be to keep that, not just being a yearly event, wouldn't it?
We actually have to get we use Landmark to do the anti-money laundering checks. So we have to get their date of birth when we take them on the market or for buyers. So if we do keep, we've got that. Yeah, and you could diarise them for a birthday card.
You can even send, if you had new homes data, you could even send their home a birthday card.
Yeah.
If you knew it, because the best bit of I tell you what, the best marketers I know at the moment are pet insurance companies, because we get a birthday card for our dog.
Yeah.
Well, we have 2. She's 2. And we've had a birthday card for our dog. It's from Pet Plan. And it's brilliant marketing. I tell you why, because I'm sharing the story with you, and my wife shares the story with her. Oh, Lindy's got a birthday card. It's handy because it saves me going to the pet shop.
That's quite edgy, though, isn't it? Still I say, what happens if there's been a disaster? Happy birthday, 4th birthday. Well, I suppose that's just like fetching for a new pet, isn't it?
But that would apply to us sending out birthday cards to humans. If you didn't, you'd have to be really engaged with your database to know the internet. Or, hope you and John are well. Actually, I've divorced John. Do you know what I mean?
You've got to put yourself out there a bit, haven't you, to get You shouldn't let those outlier examples not make you do it, should you really?
Yeah.
No,
I just want to sort of take this sort of train of thought to the next level, because one of the things we do is we do send out thank you cards. But what we've started doing now and making phone calls, I get the team to send a thank you card or call our most challenging clients. So the ones that you don't actually want to speak to. Okay. And do you know what? It's amazing the response that we're getting, because it's not the response you're expecting. We did it just before Christmas, and the majority of them were like, "Oh, that's really sweet. That's really lovely. That's really nice." And they're the ones that you know the ones. We all know the ones. And I just think that we take that to the next level, and it's worked really well for us, because we've put a positive spin on maybe a negative relationship that we had with the client.
But isn't that funny? It's like when you're doing prospecting calls and you find someone that's willing to talk to you and you stay on the phone for 10, 15 minutes. Just because it's a soft, easy conversation isn't always the right one to have. And actually, often, as we know, people leave businesses on general, not because price and all these other things, but it's because they perceive they're not being cared about, isn't it? So what you've done there is you've dealt with that issue there, and actually they just realise that, this business does give a shit about it at the end of the day. Can I just ask a question, just in terms of what should we be doing as agents in this, in prospecting at the moment? We've all spoke about the need for obviously not just going in for the hard sell, but how are you doing it at the moment, reaching out to people? Because clearly you're still going to want to be talking to your pipeline. Jerry, have you got a particular view on that at the moment?
On communicating with your...
Yeah, no, literally prospecting, in terms of what should people be saying to people that they are, as we've just been talking about there, Katie's been going back over the cup. Is it just about finding a decent excuse, as it always is, to have a constructive conversation?
Well, I think it falls into, we've got this thing called the audience is in 3 sections. So the first section you've got that you're communicating with or putting your content in front of, they're the invested. They're people that are currently in the transaction with you at the moment, be it a landlord, be it a seller, be it a buyer, that sort of thing. So that's the first category. Invested, they just normally want to know what's going on with them. Yep. Yeah, they're the invested. Then you've got the interested, which is the bigger ones, and they might have shown a bit of interest in you in the past. They might be on your database, that sort of thing. With the interested, messages at the moment, keep hopeful, give them information that will help them make the move. Like you might not be thinking of moving now. In 2 months' time, you might need to know this, or you might need to know that, or blah, blah, blah. Then the third one is the invisible. And the invisible ones, the best way to get the invisible people that don't really know you exist and you don't know they exist, on social media, you can attract them. The best way to do that at the moment, without a doubt, it's not even a debate in my mind, is community-based content. Yeah. Showing them what you're doing for the community. And then you've got 3 eyes there based, yeah. Great. Covering the bases.
That's great. Thank you for that. Katie?
It's just something you just reminded me of, that Josh is very keen to say, Josh Fegan, and also I'm watching Daniel Spencer this week with Stephen Brown in the mornings, and they have both said at different times about finding out the problem. So everybody at home at the moment, I'm going out to speak to lots of people. They've all got new problems from living in their homes where they now need 2 more rooms to work, and children are there. And I think prospecting for the future is about chatting maybe now to them, saying, what is your existing issue? As in, what are you finding? How have you adapted your house? Is that going to work? Do we either talk to you about the price if you extend for yourself, and how's that going to look for the future, just to be helpful? Or let's try and find a solution to that problem, and when do you want to do it? Because if you need that extra room, is everybody struggling with problems at home? So yeah. Josh says there's like he made a little rap, which I'm not going to sing. But I always remind, it goes problem, timeline, destination, and it's the little rap with it. But
he does a bit of rap, does he?
Well, maybe he showed the rap, maybe he didn't do it. But that's when I'm on evaluation, I hear sometimes like problem, timeline.
I'm always hearing voices in my head. Don't worry about that. It's perfect. our friend Mr. Prince, going back to your point about Zoe, the difficult ones. That's why I send my mother-in-law cards. Hard to speak to. Brilliant. Thank you for that insight, David. I'd like to finish up, people, just in terms of what we think is going to, or what might happen imminently. I think we were talking off camera earlier about how interested we were in I think they've actually done another one today, actually, the Property Industry Eye survey, where they were talking about whether agents should actually be doing public viewings and everything else at the moment. And it was about, I think I'm right in saying, it was about 2/3 said no, and 1/3 said that yes, it should continue as it is. Now, some wags, as there always are in the comments section, said 2/3 of all employees, 1/3 are business owners, and there may be some truth in that. But what do we think that is being mooted this week, that viewings potentially could be made illegal this Thursday, Friday? What does everybody think about that? And do you think, how will you change your business practice to be able to cater for that?
If you're happy for me to start on that, yeah, I mean, we changed our business a few years ago to sort of introduce virtual reality tours and sort of social media marketing there. We plug those, but in terms of like we took the step of actually just cancelling all viewings with habited properties as of literally last night and this morning. Because in Sussex, I don't know if James has got the same in Kent, but it seems to be rampant and rife. And without being political, but government's been a little bit behind the curve on this. And actually, we've got a responsibility, duty of care to our staff and our sellers and our community. I posted that as a video last night into my local, village community group, and we engaged our sellers with it. Everyone's been really supportive of it, and some of the comments and the support have been fantastic, and I think I'd encourage people to think of about sort of how you communicate with the local community on that. But we've stopped viewings. Empty properties we can obviously sort of distance, so we can just open it, back away, let them in, and then sort of lock up afterwards. But I think we've taken it out of the government's hands and decided to stop viewings ourselves there.
Okay, that's really good.
We've not yet taken that decision, but taking what Katie said earlier on last Monday, we were in contact with all of our sellers straight off saying, look, we are open, we are able to continue to conduct viewings, but are you happy for us to continue to conduct viewings? If you're not, that's absolutely fine. We've got a personal video tour where one of the team has been filmed walking through the property and talking through the property that we send out to any prospective buyers. So that's sent to everybody as a matter of first viewing. Yeah. But where any seller has said, no, I don't want any viewings, and that's absolutely fine, then we said, right, we'll stop and just hold the data, send them the video tour, answer all the questions that we possibly can, and leave it at that until such time as we can come back safely into the property.
So very much listen to your clients before making a decision, listen to the
completely.
Yeah, okay. Zoe, Katie, either of you got an opinion on that?
I mean, I sort of touched on it earlier. We're not doing it, and we haven't been doing it for some time, probably since March. So we've never really changed what we were doing at the first lockdown. It's a very difficult one to call, and I was talking to a member of staff earlier about it. You're treading a fine line between running your business effectively so you don't go under, whilst keeping everybody safe. And I think there has been a lot of debate, as we all know, online about how we should all deal with this. And I think as businesses, we have to make the right call. And as long as you're safe and you know that you're as safe as you possibly can be, then you do what's right for your business. And I'm not sitting on the fence here because everybody's different. I know that the number of cases in my area are absolutely rampant, rife, and I would not want to put anybody at risk. So we use the appropriate technology to ensure that we can do it to an adequate level. But you have got to be careful. I mean, we're hearing of like oven cleaning companies that are in and out of 5 or 6 different occupied premises every day of the week. Now, it's more likely they're spreading the virus than we are. And, going back to what I was saying off camera about having the right statistics to understand whether this industry are responsible. Unfortunately, I think, as we all know, until we're regulated as agents, there are the irresponsible agents. I heard about a colleague who's got a friend in Birmingham. I won't name the agency, but they have been doing back-to-back viewings with no PPE since the last lockdown. Now, you can understand why people want to shut viewings down when you know that that's happening. We all know here, I can see that, we're all doing it the right way. But clearly there are, until we are regulated, there are going to be these back of the fag packet shysters doing it. And that's the unfortunate thing.
You asked the question earlier, are there any statistics? I was just literally on a call with Ed Mead of Viewer fame previously, and he was just talking about, and he was saying since the start of obviously lockdown, they've done over, I think it was 100,000 viewings with their viewers and not one, incident. So, of course, you can never tempt fate with all that, but that's a huge sample, isn't it, to show that done correctly here, it is not the high risk scenario that people imagine it is. But of course, as always, we will be dictated, and unfortunately, we will get collateral damage by those. But obviously, just like the idiots that having the house parties, doing the beach and everything else there. And I am a little bit amazed, and I'm sure Jerry would be able to write us a decent headline for the first time that an agent is perceived to pass this on to a member of the public. The tabloids will go just shit fit, won't they? It ticks so many different boxes for them as a perfect story, which would be horrific. And unfortunately, everyone else would get caught in the crossfire, wouldn't they?
I think we've got the potential here to really muck it up for ourselves as an industry, because we're not always perceived fantastically, and I think a lot of the things that a lot of the local independents have done have been great with the supporting the local community. But again, you get a couple of slapdash people that just really end up passing the virus on, and absolutely it's like estate agents kill vendors. That's kind of a headline that's going to stick, and that's why we've taken the view that we have.
Understand that entirely.
The key there, with what Paul's saying as well, is you've got to communicate how seriously you're taking it.
Yeah.
Don't never assume in communications. Never assume somebody thinks, oh, they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You got a chance to the agents, and I'm sure all you guys here, and we know plenty of other really good agents, all doing the right thing. Communicate that and again and again and again. You've got to be seen to be clean.
Peter, talk about making the invisible visible, and that's exactly what you're talking about there, isn't it, Jerry? Getting that across to people. Guys, we've almost hit an hour. I've really enjoyed your feedback. It's been fascinating to hear from people on the front line, and obviously from both the suppliers and the agents. I'd like to say thanks for joining us or giving us that feedback. I was busily trying to have a look around when we were talking about the way that Zoom calls were done. There was a particular tweet I saw. Let's see if I can share this on the screen. Can you all see that okay? I think we're all familiar with the kind of very professional person at the top. And then we come down to reality down below. Those bedrooms, I'm sure, were very similar to most of us in the background here when we're behind the kind of green screen that we're on. Everybody, I want to say thank you, stay safe, and keep doing what you're doing, because I think you're doing a fantastic thing. Bring a bit of revenue into this country when it's needed. Paul, James, Katie, Jerry, and Rory, Zoe's just disappeared off my screen. But thank you once more, and join us again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.